The Historical Society is very, very pleased, as I said, to have you all here. And we would be delighted if any of you would like to become members of the Historical Society. I've got some membership brochures, and as you know, the Historical Society depends very heavily on its membership to carry out its various programs and to serve its public. All of you very much included. One other thing that I would like to bring to your attention. Did you get to see the Gadsden Treaty exhibit? No, hope so. If you didn't, I hope you'll have an opportunity to see it. It was the Gadsden Treaty in 1853, which brought Atanasio, Guadalupe, Petra, and the rest of Tucson into what is now the United States, and ratified in 1854. And we were very fortunate early this year in bringing from National Archives the original of the Gadsden Treaty, and we have a whole exhibit out there. I cannot tell a lie. The document that you will see is a very good copy, but we had to send the original back to National Archives. But as a part of our exhibit and our program, we had made a little souvenir which we are selling. That's why I said a commercial extent. And it is a silk scarf of the original map of the Gadsden Purchase. And for you ladies, if you're interested, it's a very beautiful piece. They were done in a very limited edition, and they're a little bit expensive. They're silk scarves. They're $50. So any of you who might like to have one, the proceeds of that go directly to supporting the museum exhibits, and I happen to have a couple of them available. So. Commercial is done.
Thank you. We're going to turn the time over now to Marge Simons and Richard Hughes. They're going to be talking about Sam's baby brother, Colonel Thomas Hughes, and then we have the unveiling of a special portrait. And we'll let Tom do that when it's his turn. And then after that, we will hear from Lynn Harris on Jesse Petra Hughes Stradling McReynolds, the 11th child of Sam and Atanasio, and then Barbara Tanzia on Petra Manuela Hughes Landon, the 10th child of Sam and Atanasio. And we'll just go ahead and proceed in that order. When it's your turn, just hustle up and do your thing. Thanks.
My name is Marge Simons, and the only claim to the Hughes family that I have is through my granddaughter, Tessalina Simon, who's sitting right over here. And her grandmother is Anne Hughes Cariva, who is Tom's granddaughter. And I want to introduce Anne Cariva as the oldest living relative of Thomas Hughes. She's right over here in the corner. There she is. Stand up, Anne. Richard and I are going to share this program. I'll do the first part and you'll do the second part. Thomas Edward Hughes was born on the 2nd of May, 1843 at Allegheny City, Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, the youngest son of Samuel and Elizabeth Edwards Hughes, who had migrated from Wales on the North Star to Philadelphia on April 4th, 1840. The family arrived in time to be counted in the 1840 census of Philadelphia County at Spring Garden Township near Manayunk on the Schuylkill River. Samuel took up dairying briefly before the family moved upriver to another farm on the outskirts of Allegheny City. Shortly after the birth of Thomas, his mother Elizabeth died, and his father was permanently injured in a farming accident from which he never recovered. The father was placed in a poor home, and the children put under the guardianship of a William Robinson, a banker in Allegheny City. Tom's sister Sarah was placed in Mr. Robinson's home, while the younger boys, Louis, age 9, and Thomas, age 7, were placed in an orphan asylum in Allegheny City, where we found them listed in the 1850 census. We think they were there a great deal sooner than that because Louis, in one of his stories, says he was put there when he was 2. At this time, the condition of these places was appalling. Breakfast consisted of bread, a little butter, and coffee. Dinner was only a stew, bread and water. Supper was tea and bread with a spoonful of molasses. Only children in the infirmary were ever given milk. About 1857, at age 14, Thomas went to Kansas to his older brother William, where he was apprenticed to the Kimball brothers to work in the machinist trade. Got to show you this first. There is Louis and Thomas on the top 2 lines in the orphanage. We did find them in the orphan asylum. Thomas worked in the machinist trade until the outbreak of the Civil War, when he responded to Abraham Lincoln's call for 75,000 troops. This is the only picture we have of Thomas in the Civil War. And it's actually in the retired Civil War people when he came to Tucson. And Thomas is right there. It's the little short guy. Thomas, who had just turned 18, enlisted as a drummer boy in the 1st Kansas Volunteers and was promoted to private before the company was mustered. He spent 3 months fighting skirmishes in Missouri, recovered from serious wounds in his right side, and went on with his company to fight with General Grant's army in Tennessee. He was engaged in the battle at Shiloh and in the siege at Corinth, Mississippi, where the troops were assigned to protect the Mobile and Ohio railroads from Columbus, Kentucky into Mississippi. In the 42-day siege at Vicksburg, he was injured and left behind with the dead and wounded. Frequently, they left behind all the wounded because very few of them ever survived. Surviving this event, he went on in 1863 to fight in the Meridian Campaign with Sherman. On July 16, 1864, he was mustered out of the 1st Kansas Volunteers, and as if he didn't have enough punishment, he immediately rejoined the 17th Kansas Volunteers, was made a sergeant, and fought with General A.J. Smith's army against Price and Marmaduke. In December of 1864, the 17th Kansas Volunteers disbanded. Thomas went out for some more service. He was commissioned 1st Lieutenant in February of 1865, commanding the 5th U.S. Volunteers. This was an interesting group. They were a group of Southern Army prisoners who had been enlisted to fight the Sioux Indians. In the winter of 1865-66, he was with General Connors at Powder River, and in the Bighorn country where his unit was attacked by 10,000 Sioux Indians, forcing a retreat to Fort Reno. In 1866, he was ordered to Fort Kearny and mustered out, now joining Company A of the 18th Cavalry at Fort Harker, and saw eight months of service with General Custer. On the 10th of July, 1866, he was brevetted Colonel of Volunteers for his meritorious service during the War of the Rebellion and the Indian Wars in the West. On December 29, 1867, he mustered out of the 18th Kansas at Fort Harker, and shortly thereafter started for Tucson, via New York and Panama to San Francisco, then back to San Diego, then on to Tucson, arriving in the Old Pueblo on July 19, 1868. Thomas took up a business at Camp Crittenden in the Sonoyta Valley, where for a time he ran the settler store. On February, here he is down at the very bottom in yellow. There he is. He's listed as a farmer, and he's living at Camp Crittenden in the 1870 census. On February 4th, 1869, under the preemption law, Thomas Hughes with J.H. Moulton, Samuel Hughes, and James Downing claimed all the land lying north of the claim known as the Casablanca Ranch, and south of Camp Brittany in the valley of Sonoyta, Arizona Territory, 480 acres, making 3 claims more or less. It looks like that the three of them went together and got 3 homestead claims of 160 acres each. And how they divided it up later, I have not been able to discover as yet. But this is his land claim from Pima County deeds. And so began his ranching life in the Sonoyta Valley. And this is a picture of the ranch. And the biggest square was the first 480 acres. The rectangle up to the right is where they developed a mill site called Lumpy Springs. And then down below is the next piece he wrote, which I think finally made him have about 640 acres. Anne Hughes Kariba, granddaughter of Thomas Hughes, had in her possession a handwritten diary written by Thomas about his life at this time. We are so thankful that Anne has shared a copy of this document with the family. The first story, this is what the diary looked like, and that's a page from the diary. In this diary, Tom writes about his ranch life beginning in 1869 through the time he left and came back to Tucson to live because he couldn't stand the Apaches any longer in 1883. The first story in Tom's diary begins in 1869 with the location of the ranch, and I want to read it to you because it's a great description. About the first day of February, I located the ranch known as the Casablanca. Present proprietor is Walter Vail and Oscar Ashburn. I remember the time very well. Snow was falling very heavy, and like everything in the way of storms in Arizona, the snow was coming down in flakes as large as good-sized Arizona election ballots. I was at the time accompanied by Captain Moulton, 1st U.S. Cavalry, and Hiram S. Stevens, afterward delegate to Congress for 2 terms from this territory. At this early date, I could not look forward to the events that would transpire during the next 10 years. And the next 10 years, Richard Hughes is going to tell you all about. Richard?
I think right now would be a good time to unveil this picture we have of Tom Hughes, Lorraine. I'm asking Lorraine to do this.
Can we introduce Lorraine? She is she's the collections manager, the head of the collections department of the museum for the Historical Society. And it's Lorraine that has arranged to have the painting restored, conserved, and put into its prison.
About the Hughes exhibit for us,
Yes,
2 years ago.
Absolutely.
So,
Hi, thank you. Welcome to Tucson. Pleasure to see you all back again and some new faces here. I'll be very brief, but I just want to tell you that I would like to invite you to please, this is what I've learned from your past reunion, please continue to have reunions here because it's bringing up some marvelous treasures. And one of them you're going to see right now. And it's really kind of serendipitous how this came about. But you will recall, in preparation for the last family reunion, we decided to put together the exhibit about Sam Hughes. So we started looking to see what kinds of things we had in our library and archives and museum collections about the family. And after the exhibit was over, there were a few odds and ends that I had still in the back of my head that I wanted to check in our museum collections. And I stumbled upon something that had a Hughes name attached. And it was a painting. And I was like, well, you know, it could be coincidental, but maybe it's something to do with the family. So I took it out and looked at it, and there's written on the back, it says, painted by. Ooh, there's things in the exhibit that people brought to lend that were painted by one of the girls in the Hughes family. I wonder if this is the same person. And we looked at it, saw this young man's face, and said, you know, who is this? And it turns out that he is indeed Tom Hughes. And we're so excited that we found him and that we can share him here with you today. And when we saw him, he had several holes in his canvas, and he was kind of dirty. So we invited an art conservator in private practice here in town to tell us how to get him fixed up. And she told us she could do that. And through the generosity of Mr. Dick Hughes, that happened. And since then, also through his kind generosity, he's been framed beautifully. We hope you'll enjoy that today. So we're going to unveil this wonderful thing.
Lorraine, remember
Oh, yes. Yes. One thing we found out when we were looking for him, I went to our library archives and started looking to see, well, are there any other people that we have images of in the photo collections with the same name? And you know what popped up? The exact same image. And so what we've discovered is probably there was maybe a daguerreotype or a tintype taken of this man, just as he is, as you will see him now, probably around 1861, 62-ish, when he enlisted as the drummer boy, okay? Now, this image probably deteriorated over time, but it stayed with the family in Tucson, and they had a local photographer named Hughes copy it. He did a lot of this kind of work late in the 19th century. Well, he did it and created a new negative and a new print, and we think that she painted it directly from that image. So you're going to see exactly what was taken in 1861, 62-ish.
Remember that he's standing out there by the stage. Know that?
Yes.
If you look closely, you'll see a little beard that he's drawing right under his chin. Before the painting was cleaned, you couldn't determine that that was a beard, it was just part of the dirty canvas. Well,
Microphone closer.
Tom arrived in Tucson area and was looking for something to do, some type of employment where he could make a living. He was very much interested in mines, and so that drew him to southern Arizona, kind of close to the border, because at that time there were 80 mining claims and 1,600 acres just outside of Nogales, to the east of Nogales. And so going down there, he found his ranch Casablanca and purchased the ranch. Well, I guess they didn't tell him about the Indians because during the course of his ownership in the ranch, he had 22 of his men working for him get killed by the Indians. And he was pretty close to getting killed himself a number of times. And I think that's why he decided to move to Tucson. His wife would not leave, and he didn't want his wife and his family to be subjected to this. And so they had 2 kids. They moved to Tucson, and they had 7 more. Well, while he was down there in Casablanca, Sam Hughes would come down to visit him. And the story goes that Sam would go down. It was a 60-mile trip. And it took all day. Just before dawn, you take off, you get there at about sunset. And all the way down there, Sam kept his horses at a slow trot. And they asked him, well, why don't we go a little bit faster? And he said, well, in case the Indians come, I want enough energy left in the horses to get away. And so how true that could be when you have to fight that. Now, Tom talked about the Indians. He said they weren't fighters, they were assassins, and I'm using his words. And he said they would lay in wait, hide behind bushes or wherever until you made a mistake, and then they would attack you. And one of the favorite things that they did is when you were out in the field plowing, they saw that you were separated from your wagon where your armament was, they would come between you and your guns and kill you. Now, Tom, all the time he was there, he had his carbine in a scabbard attached to his plow, and he had his guns around his waist, and so they couldn't separate him from his armament. one of the things that they did whenever they hired somebody down there, besides giving them the horse to ride and the equipment to farm and to ranch, they had to supply the armament for them. So it wasn't a very good existence, you might say. I think the last one that made him make up his mind to leave, he was at his ranch, and the lower ranch foreman came up and told him that the Indians had raided the ranch, killed the herder, and gotten off with 24 head of horses, good horses, and 7 head of cattle. And so he immediately got 4 men, and they went after them to see if they could find them. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. When they got to the ranch, they saw also some guns and armament was taken. And they continued on down trying to see if they could catch him. And as they rode, they decided that maybe it wasn't the Indians, perhaps it might be some Mexicans from across the border. It was very close. And so they, I guess, didn't pay as much attention as they should, because as they came around with the opening of the big valley, the Sonoyta Valley in front of them, and a hill behind them, they saw 100 Indians there with rifles and guns and shooting them. And so the first thing that happened was 3 of his men and their horses fell dead. And he had 1 man himself, and so he started to go towards the valley. The grass was high, and out of the grass, another 50 Indians popped up, and they started shooting. They killed the 4th man that was with them. An Indian grabbed his leg and tried to pull him off the horse, and he thought he had it at that time. But he said he had a smart horse, very intelligent. The horse jumped away from the Indian, and he had to let go, and then he took off. And he was firing with his pistol, they were firing at him. He said the whole thing took about 5 seconds. And he said that was a terrible, horrible experience that he had. It never came that close. He wasn't hurt, the horse wasn't hurt. That was kind of an unusual situation. But after that, he decided to move to Tucson. And while in Tucson, he did quite a number of things. He was auditor of Arizona for 4.5 years. He owned a hardware store for 11 years. And he was postmaster of Tucson for 1 year, president of the Chamber of Commerce for 6 years, chairman of the Republican Committee for 6 years, and 5-year president. He was president of this Arizona Pioneer Historical Society for 5 years. In fact, that's his 5th year is when he died, at the age of 64. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself there. When he got to Tucson, he went ahead and built a house and bought some land. And there was this kid. Let's see if we get the lights off now. There are the children and his wife, Maria Elena Martinez. And he met Maria Elena Martinez at Washington Camp, which is at the east end of Nogales. And that's where they had all those mining claims. She was going to a convent school in Mexico, in Santa Cruz, Mexico. And I don't know why she was at Washington Camp, but there she was. And they met and married about 4 years later. And they ended up having 9 children. That was their house. The house has been torn down to make way for a parking lot for, at one time there was Tucson Electric Power trucks. His wife died rather suddenly. She gave birth to the 9th child in May. And in August at 5 o'clock in the morning, she went out to the corrals where she had a lady milking the cow. And while she was standing there, close to the wall, it was 14 feet high, it fell on her, and it killed her. And so she was left Tom as a widow. Tom's sister, Annie, moved in. That was Sam's sister also, and helped raise the kids. There's the house that he built. My father was born in that window on the left side of that painting. That's the only thing the family has at their house is a painting. There's the store. Now, if you notice it, he's standing there in a certain way with his hand up. As you leave here, you'll see a safe in the entryway, and there's two gentlemen cutouts, two gentlemen standing by the safe. The gentleman on the left-hand side is Tom Hughes. Well, I walked in here and saw it, and I recognized him, and I asked who it was just to verify it. They didn't know. So I asked them to show me where they got the cutout, and it was Tom Hughes Hardware Company. So that was kind of confusing. Shortly, that's his wife, Maria Elena Martinez. And that's the story about the wall falling on her and killing her. And this is after the funeral, several months after the funeral. You can see the baby's about maybe 4 or 5 months old there. And there's a proud father showing his family, but you can certainly tell the mother wasn't around because look at the trash at the bottom there. And the knees are showing through the stockings and the shoes untied. The boy is he proud. There is the brood, 9 of them, now grown. And let's see, we have that one there is Louis Hughes.
Into the microphone, please.
That's Louis Hughes, right there. And that's my grandfather, William Hughes. This is Annie that moved in to take care of the kids. And this is Tom, the way he looked just before he died. He died at the age of 64. He was the youngest member of the family, and he died 10 years before Sam did. And Sam was 14 years older than Tom. But I think Tom had a pretty rough life, and I think that's probably what got him. And I think that's all the time that I have. And if you have any questions, I may not be able to answer them later on. Thank you very much.
My name is Lynn Harris, and to establish my credentials, my mother is Ruth Corbett Cross, so I come from the Corbett branch of the family. And I wanted to just gather some remembrances of Jessie Hughes, who was Sam and Atanasia's 11th child. If I counted the Cliff's genealogy chart right, she was number 11. The reason I thought...
Lynn, I'm sorry. We're just about out of tape